Are you looking to get a new camera for your live streams, content creations, or YouTube videos, but not sure what to start with? Well, perhaps you should take a look at the AVermedia 313 live streaming camera that claims to be one of the best budget-friendly entry options. Let's go. Hey, it's me, it's Wild, coming at you from my stream support playlist where I bring you the best tips and tricks. And if this is your first time here and you want to learn how to grow and improve your stream, make sure you hit that big red subscribe button and tick that bell so when my videos go live for you. And hey, at any point in this video, if you like the product or the service that I'm talking about, did you all a favor? I put links in the show notes below, so make sure you check them out. So the AVermedia Cam 313, also known as the PW313, how do I know? Says so right there on the box, is the new kid on the block for live streaming content creation or YouTube videos. The AVermedia Cam 313 is a full HD 1080p video camera. It's a USB 2.0. Has an image sensor, CMOS sensor of 2 megapixels, which means it has a max resolution of 1080p at 30 frames per second. Comes with a fixed focus with dual microphones on each side and a cable length of 1.5 meters. The AVermedia Cam 313 also comes with an additional 3 features, a full 360-degree swivel head, so that way you can adjust the camera with ease, in addition to a privacy shutter on the slick design to stop all those peepers out there. And last but not least, it comes with additional camera and beauty filters for when you're live streaming through some downloadable software that they provide. Alright, enough jibber jabber. How does the camera actually look? Well, let's take a look. And here you go. This is what I look like on the AVermedia Cam 313, and it's all glorious 1080p at 30 frames per second. What you were seeing before was obviously off my Canon, which is at 60 frames per second, so there's going to be a diminish of what you see in quality, but don't hold that against the camera itself since it's only doing in 30p. Now, the first thing I noticed right off the bat with this camera is I love the color space. I mean, the colors are actually really true. I mean, look, blues are blues, greens are greens, reds are reds. All the colors are what they are supposed to be, which I generally have a lot of issues with in other cameras and their settings, but this is pretty much the color out of the box. To be honest, I bumped up the saturation just by 2 points on the driver, just because I wanted to look a little bit better out there for things not being whitewashed out. The other thing you might notice is how generous the field of view is for this camera. Now, they didn't publicize what the field of view is from AVermedia, but it looks to be quite wide, which is nice. So that way it gives you the option to crop in what you may need for your YouTube videos and your game streams out there. But one thing I did notice right off the bat that I was not a huge fan of, and you probably notice it too, is the image is a little bit soft. And at first I thought it was due to the fixed lens. That's right, I can't move the lens around at all with a digital zoom or an optical. It's actually fixed at a certain focal plane. And I thought, well, maybe I was too far away and it was soft, or maybe I was too close and it was soft. You really have to find the sweet spot of this camera to make sure you're in focus. And in addition to that, it just seems to be naturally soft throughout the entire image. So you're gonna have to bump up the sharpness within the settings to get an actual image quality that you're going to like. Now, everything is illuminated and everything is super bright, but one thing I do not like within this camera, but it's not that big of a hindrance, is you may notice in the background of all of my colors that are a little bit down from the basic key light here, you may notice a little bit of the grain or the film or any of the white noise that is kind of bouncing around. And that's because the image sensor is struggling to produce an image on that. Now, I know it's minimal, and if you're using this for game streams and you're going to shrink your image way down while you're playing a game, actually, nobody's ever gonna notice. But if you do 1080p at 30 frames a second in a full screen mode, people may notice it, and it could be a little bit of a hindrance. So I wish there was a better way to clean that up. And trust me, I spent hours and hours and hours within the settings to find a way to get it, and to be honest, this is about as good as I could get it. So what are some of my favorite features of this camera? Well, to be honest, like I said before, I love the color space. I do a lot of creative work on Twitch and YouTube, and having true colors be exactly what I want to represent is extremely important to me. The color space of this camera is actually really phenomenal. The fact also too that I need to do minimal adjustments is huge. It was a very strong plug and play, except for that sharpness issue that I had. But again, that can be different depending on the type of setup you have. If you're using indoor studio lights or using more natural light, the camera will have a better time of pulling an image. So keep that in mind when making your decision of what type of setup you have. I also was extremely impressed at how well this camera worked within low light situations. So if you're a streamer out there that doesn't have much of a studio setup or much lighting, this camera may be more powerful for you to use as opposed to like a Logitech C920 or 22. So keep that in mind. What about the cons of this camera? Well, to be honest, we've already addressed one with how it has a softness issue throughout the entire profile of the camera, but I feel like this could be cleaned up depending upon what your settings are for your stream and how you move that sharpness slider. Just might take a little bit more tweaking, and perhaps if there's a firmware update that comes out from AVermedia, maybe they'll correct this issue overall, and then this camera could be one of the best cameras out there. The second issue I have with this camera, it is kind of lame if I am paying a certain dollar amount that's competing against other cameras on the market, that this camera doesn't come with the option of 720p at 60 frames per second. And I feel like this is where this camera drops the ball. And I know it's a preference for certain people out there. If you want to have, you know, 1080p at 30 or 720 at 60, you get to have that option. And it would be nice to have that option. Leave that up to the streamer. Don't decide that for us. That's kind of my two biggest gripes about the camera. But to be honest, I think this camera's actually really good. In fact, I'm probably gonna play around with it a lot more to see if I can figure out a way to tinker it so that way I can get you the perfect profile settings for everybody that's out there and interested in this camera. Now, this camera runs around 80 USD, and I think it's actually a pretty good price point. If it was going for sale under that, I would say definitely snag it up. Now, the biggest question everybody's probably gonna ask to me is, Wild, what do you think about this camera competing against the Logitech C920 or Logitech C922? And I say, wow, that's a great question. And you know what? I think I should actually do a video on that so that way you can see the pros and cons of making your decision out there. And if you're interested in that video, do me a favor and leave me a comment below and I will see what I can do to make a video on that for you. All right, so please forgive me. I shot this segment right here 3 different times on 3 different days. And this was the spot where I talk about the camera effects and beauty filters that come with the Cam 313. And my opinion then is drastically different now that I've had a little more time to play and troubleshoot the camera. So the beauty effects and camera effects, they actually work really well and they're fun to play around with. And the smoothing and the whitening actually do exactly what they say they do. However, there is still a few things that kind of irk me the wrong way on this feature. So this right here is the manual for the Cam 313 from AVermedia, which tells you with instructions that you need to download some additional software. But the directions it gives you in here lie. So don't listen to that manual. What you want to do is go to AVermedia.com and go to the product that you have, which is the Cam 313, and go to the download section. You don't really need to download the drivers unless you want to use the Rec Central software, but you do have to download the actual engine from AVermedia to get the filters and camera effects to work, which is the tab over under utility. Why was that so difficult to put in the manual and tell people about? But luckily, I figured it out for you. With the engine all downloaded, all you have to do if you're in something like Slobs or OBS or XSplit is not actually select the camera, which is the Cam 313 as a source, but you want to select the engine as a source. Again, you may miss this if you don't use the utility, because if you don't get this utility engine driver, none of the beauty effects of filters will be accessible to you, and none of the extra camera effect filters will be accessible to you. Now, to be honest, this is a very small complaint because obviously I solved the issue for you. One thing that kind of bothers me a little bit is if you're a single monitor streamer out there, you actually have to have the engine from AVermedia open to change all of the beauty effects and or the camera filter effects. And that just means that's one more thing to micromanage, which isn't that bad if you plan on finding a certain like preset for the smooth and the whitening. But if you want to change back and forth on the filter effects for having like a pig nose or kind of a blush filter effect, guess what? You have to tab out and go onto that and then go back into your stream, which means you're gonna be micromanaging. I really feel like this should be a plug-in for slobs or OBS, or an extension or plug-in again for like a Stream Deck, because that would make it a lot more streamlined. So that would be one of my biggest complaints. Now, as for the beauty filter effects, you know, they actually work really well, and I was impressed. You wanna find a happy medium of where the smoothing and the whitening works for your skin. I'm gonna show you a couple examples of them to the maximum, just so you can see how the smoothing effect works overall, plus the camera filter effects, because they're fun to play with. However, they do have some drawbacks, and the drawbacks is the effect that they have on the background. Yes, it may smooth your skin and make you look excellent and great, but if you're not using something like a green screen and you're showing your background, it's going to introduce a lot of grain and noise, kind of rendering the software a little bit useless unless you find that happy medium. Another issue I ran across using the camera effects and beauty filters, which is a big hindrance, is actually when I switch between scenes and different camera filters and effects, it actually crashed my computer a handful of times, which makes me feel like there's an issue of maybe how much CPU it's allocating to get everything to work. And my computer is no chump computer. It's got some beefy parts. And sometimes when I use like the Rec Central software, it would actually just gray out the camera entirely. Now, if you don't plan on using the camera filter effects, and probably most of you aren't going to use them, this isn't going to be a detriment at all, but I feel like AVermedia needs to address this, because you plan on using them because they are kind of fun. I can't have my stream crashing on me halfway through a stream just because I want to switch some scenes or switch some effects. So again, this all goes back to what I said earlier about how this camera is exceedingly good, but it is going to require some extra tweaking and may take a little bit of extra refinement to get it the way that you like. But overall, this thing is pretty much a good warhorse. If you're interested in the AVermedia 313 cam, I did you all a favor. I put links in the show notes below. Click through those. They help me out. And I'm also curious to know, while you're down there, leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on the AVermedia Cam 313. What you like about it and what you don't like about it, because that's always good feedback. If you like this video and it'll help me out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will see you all in my next stream support video coming out real soon. Take care, all. Peace!